The note was found folded into the thin plastic tray of hospital breakfast, its edges damp from spilled juice and trembling hands, and the words inside were written in uneven crayon lines by 3 small hearts that were breaking at once. It was not long, not clever, and not meant for anyone important, yet it carried a weight that bent the morning air around it and stopped a powerful man from breathing for a moment. The note asked for one thing only, that someone please visit Daddy because he was lonely, and in that instant the polished glass tower across the street, the boardrooms, the accolades, and the victories all felt distant and hollow under the pale daylight. If you believe in second chances and the quiet miracles that happen when people finally show up for one another, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Kindora Life, because stories like this grow stronger when they are carried together. Elias Rowan had built a company from a rented desk and a borrowed computer, turning daylight hours into relentless progress and nights into blue-lit calculations. He was the kind of chief executive whose calendar ruled his sleep, whose voice moved markets, and whose name carried weight in headlines that never mentioned his heart. The hospital room he occupied that December morning was bright and clean, sun spilling through tall windows as nurses moved with soft efficiency, yet Elias felt smaller there than he had ever felt in his life. He had come in for tests after a fainting spell at the office, an inconvenience he planned to outrun, until the doctor's careful language suggested he would be staying a while. In the stillness between rounds, the truth crept in like cold light. Success had not prepared him for being alone. The nurse assigned to his wing that week was named Maribel Cruz, a woman whose calm presence seemed to soften corners and whose footsteps carried purpose without noise. She had seen loneliness before, in rooms where daylight could not warm the edges, and she had learned to read the quiet signs that people left behind when they were afraid. As she adjusted the tray and checked the chart, her eyes caught the folded paper tucked under a napkin. It was not standard procedure to read patients' notes, but this one seemed to be waiting. When she unfolded it, the letters looked as though 3 small hands had taken turns, each line leaning in a different direction. The message asked someone to visit Daddy because he was lonely, signed not with names but with 3 tiny hearts drawn in different colors. Maribel did not know Elias beyond his chart and the way he stared at the window as if it were a screen that refused to load. She did not know about the triplet girls who lived 2 towns away with their grandmother, or the long months of cancelled visits and postponed calls that had taught them to leave messages instead of expecting answers. She only knew that a note like that was a map to a wound, and that daylight, when used right, could be medicine. She slipped the paper back, finished her tasks, and made a decision that would ripple far beyond the ward. Years earlier, Elias had promised himself that his daughters would never want for anything. When the triplets, Aria, Solene, and Bria, were born early and small, he had stood in a sunlit neonatal unit and sworn to build a world strong enough to protect them. He did not plan on grief arriving so quietly that it felt like a scheduling conflict. Their mother's passing had turned his days into a blur of work and logistics, and though he loved his daughters fiercely, he believed providing was the same as being present. Daylight became a resource to spend, not a gift to share. Over time, the girls learned to fold their needs into drawings and notes, leaving them in places he might notice later. In the hospital, the days were structured by beeps and checklists, but the afternoons stretched long and empty. Elias watched people cross the street below, coats bright against winter sun, and wondered when his life had narrowed to a window. He thought of the girls' laughter as a distant sound, something he had heard once and intended to hear again when the right quarter ended. He did not know that Maribel had called a social worker she trusted, or that she had pulled strings that only nurses know how to pull, or that she had decided to bring Christmas early and in daylight, because waiting felt like another kind of harm. Maribel believed that care was more than medication. She believed in rooms transformed by intention, in the way sunlight could be guided to fall on the right surface. She gathered a few volunteers on her break, people who knew how to make something out of nothing, and together they found simple decorations that looked honest in the afternoon light. Paper snowflakes, a small tree that fit on a rolling table, and a red cloth that warmed the room without hiding its truth. She spoke to the administration with calm resolve, and when she mentioned children, the door opened a little wider. The girls arrived on a clear day when the sky seemed newly washed. They held hands in a line, identical faces made distinct by the way they moved, by the way their eyes took in the room with careful hope. Their grandmother had brushed their hair until it shone, each style a little different, and dressed them in bright sweaters that caught the light. They did not know what to expect. They only knew that someone had listened to their note. As they stepped into the room, daylight wrapped around them, and Elias felt his chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with his tests. He saw them first as shapes of color against the white, then as the daughters he had loved from a distance. Time did something strange in that moment, slowing and then releasing, and the room seemed to breathe with him. He noticed how tall they had grown, how confident and cautious at the same time, how each carried a version of him and of the woman he had lost. The tree on the table glimmered quietly, not pretending to be more than it was. Maribel stood back, her work done, her eyes kind.